For a children's game, Pokemon has always had a bizarre obsession with ghosts. And no, I don't mean ghost-type Pokemon, I mean real, human ghosts. They appear in almost every region there is, with their importance ranging from completely unimportant to slightly less unimportant. I want to figure out why there are so many ghosts in the world of Pokemon, and to do that, we need to first talk about each and every ghost that appears, so we can try and identify some patterns or similarities between them. Even from the first generation, ghosts played a huge role in the world of Pokemon. Lavender Town is, without a doubt, one of the most memorable towns in the Kanto region, and is without a doubt the most infamous. We've all heard the old creepypasta about Lavender Town Syndrome, but personally, I don't think the town even needs that fan-made story to be infamous. Just the events of the games are more than enough. Up until arriving in Lavender Town, the Kanto region is a fairly chill and enjoyable place. Its people are friendly, its Pokemon are cute, and Team Rocket is just a nuisance, nothing more, which makes arriving in this dismal town with its dismal theme eerie beyond belief. The dominating feature of Lavender Town is, of course, the Pokemon Tower, a massive graveyard dedicated to Pokemon that have passed away. While I did say we wouldn't talk about ghost Pokemon in this video, I'm pretty sure there's a difference between ghost Pokemon and the ghosts of Pokemon, and so I want to talk a little bit about Marowak. Marowak might secretly be the most pivotal character to the story of the Kanto games, a dead mother who refuses to rest until she is defeated in battle. She was killed by Team Rocket, and shows us why Team Rocket must be dealt with. She also holds one of the changes that was made in the Let's Go games that I actually really like. In those games, you calm her by showing her her child rather than knocking her out in battle. This just makes a lot more sense to me from a narrative perspective, as a mother seeing that her child is safe is of course going to calm her down more than being knocked out in a battle. The Pokemon Tower is also home to its own creepy fan theory, which is basically that Blue's Raticate died after our fight on the SS Anne, as he is here in this Pokemon graveyard and his Raticate is no longer in his party. This has never been confirmed though, and I also don't think it's too crazy that Blue would replace one of his Pokemon at this point in the game. But there is one more confirmed ghost in Lavender Town, as there's also this girl who says she sees a ghostly white hand on the player's shoulder. This could just be seen as a prank, but considering the hand does appear in Pokemon Origins, an animated series based on the events of the games, it was probably really there in the games too. What's interesting about Origins is that it implies that the woman that told Red about the hand was also a ghost, as in the animation they disappear as soon as he turns around, so they're either ghosts or secretly the fastest humans to ever exist. One of the more bizarre paranormal appearances comes out of the original Gold, Silver, and Crystal games. In the abandoned daycare on Route 5, there are two people just kind of chilling. One of them gives you the cleanse tag when you enter, and the other says they're interested in evil spirits, which is why they're in the abandoned house. Interestingly, this interaction was taken out of the remakes. But why would these two paranormal investigators be interested in a Pokemon daycare? What kind of sinister activities took place here that would make two mediums want to investigate it? I guess it doesn't really matter since it was retconned out of existence, but still, this isn't strictly a ghost appearance, but I still wanted to mention it because it still feels a bit weird. And the Johto games don't exactly have much else in terms of the paranormal. Another somewhat obscure ghost comes from the Hoenn region, and this one is actually a ghost. It's a very minor one to be fair, and it's pretty easy to miss. When you're entering battle against Phoebe, a little girl holding a doll appears in her chair for one frame during the fade to black. This same girl also stands right next to the player character when they're talking to Phoebe too. Both instances are really easy to miss because they're so brief and pretty obscure, but that also makes her one of my favorite ghosts in the world of Pokemon. We really know nothing about this little girl aside from the fact that she exists, and there aren't any other ghosts in Hoenn that I'm familiar with despite the existence of Mount Pyre, so let's move on to Sinnoh, which has a couple of spooky locations. They're almost as spooky as not being subscribed to this channel. You wouldn't want to miss an upload, would you? Ooh. I personally can't think of anything spookier. There's even a chance that you think you're subscribed, but you're actually not. Gasp. So be sure to subscribe before it's too late. Anyway, Probably the most infamous location for ghosts, besides maybe the ghost girl in Lumios, who we'll talk about later, is the old chateau in the Sinnoh region. This house is haunted as it has both an old man apparition and a little girl apparition, as well as a creepy painting whose eyes follow you when you move past it. Although that one's just a Gengar. In my opinion, the old chateau is responsible for the ghost craze that Pokemon went through from Gens 4 to 7. Sure, there were always ghosts in Pokemon, but this period of time had a ton, and I think it was because of the popularity of the old chateau and the mystery it spread. I mean, it even got a Pokemon Generations episode, which were usually reserved for important story moments, so I think that shows just how much people liked this place. But I also might be biased because I am one of those people who really liked this place. Both the girl and the butler inspired so much intrigue in this area for me. I spent hours in here just trying to figure out how I could interact with each of them, pressing A on every single tile in the rooms they appeared in to try and find some hidden text or item that would explain things. This was, of course, futile, as there is no additional information on what happened here, but I think that's kind of okay. Leaving it open-ended allows fans to generate their own theories and discuss the happenings of the buildings themselves, as we'll talk about more later on. While the old chateau might be the most prominent example of ghosts in Sinnoh, I personally find the girl in the cabin to be even more interesting. This girl up near Snowpoint City will disappear from her house after she gives you the spell tag. This item, in conjunction with her in-game dialogue, would be enough to give this occurrence creepy vibes. But it gets even more bizarre because there is an ace trainer not too far away who mentions that hauntings have been happening in this area. This girl is so much more bizarre to me than the ghosts of the old chateau. Finding weird supernatural stuff in an old abandoned mansion? Yeah, sure. Expected. But a girl in a cabin in the middle of a snowy cold area that seems to be waiting to accomplish a task? It's just more dubious. And the lack of information we have on her makes her all the more interesting. Who was she waiting for when she was alive? Did they make it? And what ultimately did her in? Somehow, the setting of this event being less intentionally creepy than the old chateau makes it more creepy. I also think the cold setting makes it spookier too for some reason. It reminds me of the ghost story from Avatar: The Last Airbender, where the little girl basically freezes to death in a blizzard and then smoke keeps rising from the igloo that she used to live in. There's definitely no real connection. Ghostly activities in the snow just always remind me of that story for some reason. I think there's something about the dark frigidness of a cabin in the middle of nowhere that creates a more physical feeling of creepiness than the old chateau. I'm not sure how else to describe it, but the idea of being stuck here in the dead of night with the wind whipping about you, completely isolated from other people, well, it's just chilling. As for Unova, there's only one real ghost that I could find, and that is the little girl who can be found on the Marvelous Bridge. According to the old lady nearby, she used to play in this area with her Abra before the bridge was built. We don't know exactly how the girl died or how old she really is, though. The fact it's an old woman who tells us about the girl kind of insinuates that she died a while ago, but there isn't nearly enough information on the history of this bridge to say for sure. This same girl later appears in the strange house in Black and White 2, where she talks about how she wanted to return the lunar wing to the bridge, but now that the player has it, she doesn't need to wait any longer. It seems she's under the influence of Darkrai in some capacity, as she says she's been in a dark dream for quite a while, which is basically what Darkrai is known for. This also makes sense considering the dreams were trying to prevent her from summoning Cresselia with the lunar wing, and we all know how Darkrai feels about Cresselia. There's yet another ghost in the Kalos region, potentially the most hyped up ghost and also kind of the most disappointing ghost in Pokemon is the Hex Maniac Ghost Girl. Whether or not this is actually a ghost or just a regular Hex Maniac is up to debate, but considering she floats like the other ghosts we see, I don't think it's too crazy to say that she is a ghost. Out of all the ghosts in Pokemon, this Hex Maniac is definitely the one that has generated the most individual conversation, the vast majority of which revolves around her dialogue. No, you are not the one, is an ominous sentence to hear from a ghost, or frankly, just to hear in general. Like, whether she's a ghost or not, this is not the sentence you want to be hearing from a hex maniac. Who could be the one? Considering ghosts don't age in the Pokemon world, this ghost could be who knows how old. Could it be AZ? Could it be someone already in Lumiose at the time of X and Y, like Sycamore? We don't know, and frankly, at this point, it's looking pretty likely that we never will. To be honest, I don't know if I want the Pokemon Company to ever finish her story. On one hand, it would be cool to get an update on her, and what's keeping her here in this world. But on the other hand, giving her more would make her too real, you know? It would demystify her. She's too much of an icon for us to get to know her. Interestingly, one of the most happy regions is also one of the most haunted, as the Alola region is not just home to one, but potentially two ghosts. The first can only be found in the Sun and Moon demo. This one might not actually be a ghost per se, but I think it's worth mentioning because it is a bit weird. Also, it's super hard to find any footage of the Sun and Moon demo, so sorry if this is just like generic Alola footage. There's a girl in Hoenn City who says she wants to see her parents again, but she's really scared to take the boat and wants to be seen off on her journey. If the player gives her some encouragement, she gives them a Comet Shard, and then walks away from the player, disappearing as a Machamp passes in front of her. To me, this reads as more of a quick and easy goodbye rather than the girl being a ghost and literally disappearing. But some people online consider this to be a supernatural occurrence, so I at least wanted to mention it. The other exists at the trainer's school, where this child asks the player to solve some mysteries around the school. Each of the mysteries has their own haunted or bizarre twist to them. There's the stairs to nowhere, where the player gets trapped on the second floor of the trainer's school because the stairs just keep looping. The ghost's classroom, where a hypno disguised as a teacher is creating illusions of a classroom full of children in order to lure other children in. The cursed diary, where the player reads a fictional story about someone buying a haunted house in diary format before being attacked by a Drifloon, and many more. Once they're all solved and the player talks to the preschooler again, she will thank them and give them the wise glasses, before the player is confronted by security guards who want to know why they're at school so late at night. At this point, the preschooler has vanished, and according to the security guards, the player wasn't talking to anyone, which obviously implies that she is a ghost. It's one of the more involved ghost stories, but I think that's actually a good thing in this case. Investigating a haunted school is a cool way to give the player access to more ghost-type Pokemon earlier in the game, and the execution of the Ghost Girl's exit is a really nice cherry on top too. Another haunted-esque area of the Alola region is the abandoned Thrifty Megamart. While this location isn't outright haunted by humans, it is full to the brim of ghost Pokemon. The building and the area around it were originally destroyed by Tapu Bulu because the land the Megamart was built on was sacred to the Pokemon. What's interesting about this location though is it seems there's no other connection to the dead like so many other locations that ghost Pokemon gather at. Do ghost Pokemon just like to gather at abandoned places? Or is there a sinister reason behind this site's sacred status? It could also just have a ghast leak, considering Haunter and Gengar's Dex entries imply that they're attracted to areas with high amounts of gas. But let's just assume it's one of the first options to keep its spooky status secure. Another cool interaction regarding a ghost comes from Sword and Shield. In Hammerlock, you can find a little girl named Paula who asks you to deliver a letter to a kid named Frank who lives in another town. Upon arriving for the delivery, it is revealed that the kid she's looking for is actually an old man now. The old man did have a friend named Paula when he was young, but she fell ill and likely died shortly after the man moved away. When the player returns to Paula's location, they will find that she is gone, and in her place is just a Reaper cloth. So why are there so many ghosts around the world of Pokemon? Well, I think the answer is surprisingly multifaceted. The most basic and straightforward reason to put ghosts in Pokemon like this is to add to the world building of each region. Pretty much every culture in our world has some paranormal or supernatural beliefs. Even if we look past beings and ideas inspired by religion, a ton of areas have their own localized urban legends that spiral into their own mythos. From Bigfoot to people dressing up as clowns in 2016 to the Jersey Devil, pretty much much every area of the world has some story regarding a person who died or some mysterious entity that exists but has never properly been documented. Putting ghosts into Pokemon games is essentially the same thing. They exist to give life to the world of Pokemon, as ironic as that is. Another potential reason that ghosts are so common is that they give fans something to talk about. The Kalos ghost girl alone has created so much discourse among fans, and other areas like the old chateau are not short on conversations of their own either. As I stated at the beginning of the video, there's a reason Lavender Town is the most memorable city in Kanto, and a big part of that is the creepypastas it inspired. The Lavender Town Syndrome story is credited with renewing interest in Pokemon among older fans. And while it certainly wasn't the intention of the Pokemon Company to create one of the most prolific urban legends of all time, I wouldn't be surprised if the continued inclusion of ghosts was in part because of the virality of this incident. And the final potential reason, in my opinion, is that the makers of the Pokemon games might just enjoy putting ghosts into their games. I have to imagine it's kind of fun, right? They get to put little tidbits and interactions into the games that require no outside explanation or connection. That sounds like a pretty fun part of game development if you ask me. Plus, considering the huge amount of ghost-type Pokemon and the fact that the ghost type has existed since the very beginning, I think there's a pretty high possibility that the higher-ups at the Pokemon Company enjoy ghost stories, and thus push for spooky locations to be included in their own games. Whatever the reason, I personally am very glad that they are so prevalent in the world of Pokemon. The ghost interactions are some of my favorite interactions to have in each game, and I truly do not know if the world of Pokemon would be the same without them, despite their relative unimportance. I hope we get to see more of them in future generations. Anyway, that's all I've got for this video. Thank you so much for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, be sure to check out the Patreon and make sure you're subscribed. It would really mean a lot to me. I'll see you again next week for our next video, and I hope you have a good time until then.